Uh, Buenos dias, bienvenidos. With this, we will finish with everything that is connected with Spanish for the beginning. I'm joking a little bit. Because for this year, actually, as we all know, Evela, that is going for the 8th year, is expanding its capacities for other people to join us, and that's why we are having this combination of Spanish and English idiomacy. So for today's work, as you all know, after this presentation that we will have, and we'll start within a couple of minutes, if I'm right, Rajko's lecture is in 3 or 3:30 at Parobrod, and after that we will have, which will be in Spanish, in English as well, and then we will have another lecture of our yesterday's guest, who is also today with us. Molto piacere di vederla. Gianluca Gardini, who yesterday made, as you all saw, very, very nice and interesting presentation about the relationship of EU and Latin America. So, since we will have to be very efficient today, I will immediately pass to our current event. And finally, I'm really more than happy that finally, after how many, already 5 years that we know each other, we've been planning the visit and full, how should I say, participation and presentation of our friend and very well-known professor and expert for the Balkans from Spain. And this is our friend and lecturer for today, Hose Anhel Ruis Himenesa. Bienvenido. Who is, I have to emphasize this, beside his, and that's always traditionally problem, I have to warn people about the Balkans. You start to deal with that and you end up like, you know, getting married here, directly connected with Balkans. It's like a drug in a way. I mean, no, but I have just briefly, my friends, some people know Cunha, Andres Cunha, some Portuguese, actually our friend, whom I met like 98 and so on. He was very attractive. He came like in 99 already, and he stayed like for 20 years, you know. It was very hard to push him out of that, you know. So watch out for dealing with the Balkans generally. But anyway, on the other hand, that's the only way we can profit really to get good people interested for us. And beside being interested in dealing with us, they start to learn really. And the result of this learning and serious dealing with the Balkans of our professor is, I have to say, and I'm choosing the words, really fantastic book that he wrote and published last year, this year. It's not fantastic only because you can read my prefacio, that's also additional thing, and I'm joking a little bit, but thank you very much for inviting me to give a small contribution. But the book is really fantastic. The book is called Yugoslavia, la guerra y la paz en los nuevos países balcánicos, or in English, we have to translate Yugoslavia, war and peace, and in new Balkan countries, we could say, not states, but países. That's very interesting. But generally, this is very comprehensive history of first Yugoslavia, second Yugoslavia, dissolution of Yugoslavia, and the new countries that are formed afterwards. So since all you know that, you know, in the 90s also, there were a couple of moves like in English, there were a lot of very strongly, if you could say, I will choose the words, the books with which we as the Serbs were not very satisfied. So the same thing happened also with popular presentation of the dissolution of Serbs in Hispanic world. And I think that this is really the first book, as far as I know, there might be better experts than I am, that really invested very huge effort to give some objective presentation, comprehensive and full of many things that are really illustrating complexities, but then on the other hand, it's very easily readable, which is very hard with the books who are dealing with dissolution of Yugoslavia, and it's really full of the qualities. So I would really like to recommend to people, we are lucky that Hose Anhel brought a couple of the copies here, not a lot of that, and you will have possibility to buy that with very reduced price, which is 2,000 dinars today. And trust me, it's really, really more than worth of using this possibility. Before passing the floor to Professor Ruiz Hименес, I will have to mention just a couple of the facts about him, beside being Serbian Zet, which is the most important, of course. I have to start with that, thanks to Ankica and to Avril, which is one fantastic girl that is a result of this Serbian Spanish cooperation. Good way to develop that in the future. I have to mention that actually Professor Ruiz Hименес is really treated as one of the biggest experts for Balkans in the Hispanic world. He's a professor at University of Granada, established in 1450, what was that?
1537.
In 1537, actually. As you can understand, with fantastic tradition, still one of the very, very attractive places for studying and working and so on. But he is working also at the Institute for Peace at the faculty, he was, I have to say, associated with history department. He was teaching also at the master programs, at PhD and so on. He was also director of the Institute for Peace, in which he is affiliated still and involved in many duties, if I can say, at the university. His work, his published work really already is comprehensive and includes several of the publications that are worth of mentioning, and I will do that now with the titles in original because they are published in Spanish. Just to mention El desarme nucleare europeo, Thompson, La conciencia crítica de la Guerra Fría, and the book that he was first mentioned, if I could say, first time when people really took a look and saw his very ambitious work on the solution of Yugoslavia, the book that is called Y llegaron los bárbaros, nacionalismo y juegos de poder durante la desintegración de Yugoslavia. Also, there is a collection that he edited, which is called Balcanes, el patrimonio abierto de Europa. Beside that, he's, which is also unfortunately not very traditional, if I could say, or not easy to find among the scholars and academics dealing with Yugoslavia. He is frequently going in the field, and he is very fantastic field worker who has developed academic but also practical connections and cooperation, I think, with almost all cathedrals of history in the region. So he just came from Banja Luka, Mostar. In Mostar, you're collaborating with both parts of the divided city and with both cathedrals. Everywhere here also with Belgrade Faculty of Philosophy, with its Cathedra for History, Novi Sad, and so on and so on. And beside that, he is also, we have to say, developed fantastic sense for anthropological studies of this field, which is often not very, very easy to find, full understanding of the people that are living, full understanding of our problems, and I can say with some love that you develop for the Balkan countries, in spite of all the problems that you may have with us and that we are having with ourselves as well. So a lot of those things you will see in the book, and I will finish within a minute. Really, book is full of, it's really comprehensive. You may find all the things you need about the history with a lot of statistics, but on the other hand, he's dealing very much with a complex problem of identity, issues of cultural problems, especially when we do speak about the 19th century, it was the basis for many of our further problems. Then he was, I have to say, very friendly in understanding, I can say objectively putting the importance of the local issues in development of Yugoslavia is the solution, and he emphasized very much, which is usually neglected, very big role of international community and so-called and great powers in the solution of Yugoslavia. Because as we all know, they all want to present themselves as, firemen who just came to, extinguish the fire and to help us. On the other hand, he showed that there are some trajectories of their interest which are visible in other parts of the world. And I also have to mention, speaking about Latin America, that he also has 8 years of work in Colombia, mostly that he was also very much involved in anthropological and field studies of Latin America, which is also valuable experience, and especially for us, this exchange, if I could say, or comparison of Latin America and Balkans are traditionally very, very interesting. And I'm finishing with that I'm really truthfully recommend this book as fantastic introduction into Balkans problems and many things that are still standing as an open issue and that will probably be around and following us and the future generations that are about to come. And on the other hand, just to illustrate the way it was written, you will find a lot of anecdote, including that how actually Mercedes-Benz, that was big present from Hitler to Ante Pavelić, eventually finished as part of the not small driving park of Marshal Tito. And many of those things in which you could see a lot of, how should I say, consequential development of the problems, but also specific facts that illustrate what was really happening here. And I would stop here. And before that, we forgot yesterday to praise ourselves and boost a little bit just to know the people, especially this gentleman that yesterday was leading, who is our expert for Latin America. We already promoted his PhD, which was dealing with Spain, and his PhD actually about regionalism as the way of preventing secession. This is, if I could say, one very interesting, and they usually say this is a good book if it can stand on its own, which proves that Rajko did a fantastic job, really. And beside that, we just briefly mentioned last year he organized the first conference about Yugoslavia and Spanish parallels, in which you can find also quite an interesting and again comprehensive work of the gentleman that is sitting on my right, Professor Ruiz Hименес, about the famous Yugoslav-Spanish rivalry in football and basketball especially, but also other parts of our sport cooperation. But beside that, there are also many different institutional, historical overviews and so on. And this year, Rajko did more or less from the Institute, of course. And this year, Rajko did even more privatization, if I can say, which was really fantastic for us. Now there are 12 young researchers strictly from the Institute, and he made also very, very nice overview of the relationship of Portugal and Serbia. So these are all our contribution to Ibero-American and Serbian exchanges. And in a way, we are happy that we are slowly building a generation that is capable dealing more with our traditions. And without further ado, thank you very much for coming finally, being with us. And as we planned, you now have something like half an hour, 40 minutes to tell us what you wanted to do actually, and why are you dealing with the Balkans and with the Serbs after all. That's one of the big problems that you may have in your life. Joking a little bit, but thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for writing this book.
Thank you, Misha, for your presentation. Thank you very much to the Institute and to the Association of Hispanists of Serbia for their kind and generous invitation. It is really my pleasure to be here. It is true that we have been planning do something together for long years before COVID. Konačno. We are here. Thank you very much to all of you for attending this presentation. I see the presentation is on. I'm going to follow Professor Gardini's example, and I'm going to stand as I normally do in my lectures. It's much better like that, right? I move a bit, so the camera can also take. Now, so we can, I can move slides. Yeah. First question is, why did it make sense to write one more book about the Balkans? Because there are already so many. So did it make sense? Was it a good idea? Misha already pointed out some of the features of the book. We'll go one by one now. But in few words, I can say that I wrote the book I would have loved to have found when I started to read and to be interested about the Balkans. First, because I think it is important to emphasize, to pay attention to the fact that this part of the world is really unique. Maybe for those, most of you who are locals, who live there, you know, but you don't appreciate it just because it is part of your life. But for those who don't belong to this land, we marvelize at the fact that in the Balkans, you are truly in the West. Most people speak English. If you ask about movies, everybody knows about TV series, actors. Most music in cafes, restaurants are in English. We are close to the European Union. People go work and spend holidays in Spain, Italy, Germany. So you are from the West, you feel home. Also, this land is part of the Slavic world. Just take the language. It's not something small. Also, Christian Orthodox religion is present. So the Slavic world is also part of this. Islam, how not? We have mosques everywhere in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, Albania, even in other parts of the country, in Serbia. The Muslim community is also big. Of course, the Jewish world has been part of the history of the region. So this mixture you can't find anywhere else. If you appreciate it, if you notice it, if you enjoy it, it is very, very special, and it is worth emphasizing and noticing. Here you have how in Sarajevo, you can walk no more than 10 minutes, and you can find a Christian Catholic church. I didn't mention Catholics. Christian Orthodox cathedral, synagogue, mosque. I don't know any other city anywhere where you can find this walking less than 10 minutes. Also, I think it was important to offer to readers a comprehensive view, because so much scholar work has been done on the world wars in the Balkans. It was very, very intense. The communist years and Tito, the 1990s war, it was a big boom of books, articles, documentaries. But, for instance, in Spain, we know very, very little about what happened before the first Yugoslavia, very, very little. And we also know very, very little what happened after the war. That's why some people, not only in Spain, all over Europe, sometimes, when they are told, hey, you know what, I'm going to spend my holidays in Sarajevo. Is it safe there? Is there war there? Come on, what ended 30 years ago, 30. Imagine you go to Germany in the 1970s. And you ask, oh, Germany, but there is war there, right? No, nobody thought about it. Why? Because last time people heard about the Balkans on a regular basis was the 1990s, so it stayed in their imagination. Also, the media coverage of the war was particularly intense. So I believed it was very important to offer readers some background, some introduction about what happened in the region before the first Yugoslavia, because it shaped, it explained the way it happened. I mean, at first sight, many people might think, hey, Yugoslavia was a natural thing because all these South Slavic Balkan regions, they were so close, they felt close, so it was normal that they lived together and created a single state. Others say, no, Yugoslavia was something totally artificial. It didn't make sense. They were different nations, and it was only a matter of time that they separated. It was a ticking bomb. Both theories are around, but I think it was important to explain why Yugoslavia came to exist at that moment, precisely at that moment, why those problems came up, and why they explain how at a later stage Yugoslavia ceased to exist. Even more interesting than that is to show reader what happened after the war, because so many things happened. But out of the countries, like here in Serbia, people don't pay much attention to what happens in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Croatia. Some news here and there come, but I thought it was not interesting, fascinating to see how each country had their own new history and how they were in many ways still related, and how now they had their own problems and also their own fantastic, very good things. Here I selected some pictures because out of the Balkans, people don't know much about the Serbian uprisings. Here it is like basic, but I thought it was important to create some context that people knew about all that period of time. Yugoslavia, Misha shared this anecdote about this fantastic Mercedes-Benz that Hitler gave to Ante Pavelic as a present, and it ended up being driven by Josip Broz Tito. So these little things, apart from, let's say, regular history, I think gives not only color, but deeper understanding and make you feel closer to what happened. So here are Mirko and Slavko, Never Again Slaves, Nika Robon, right? You have...
Which is coming out again in Danas. No, they started, sorry for entering, but these days they started to publish that after what, that 30, 40 years. That might be interesting for you.
For nostalgia.
Yeah. It's coming out in Danas, in daily Danas. Sorry for interruption.
Maybe some of you remember this person, Slobodan Praljak. How this is part of the history and controversies about the International Criminal Court, how all countries involved in the Balkans are totally convinced it is biased, useless, and against them. And how Praljak was in Western media like a criminal, the last criminal to be sentenced, and how in Croatia he died, believing it was a totally unfair sentence. He killed himself in the court, drinking some poison, and how in Croatia he is remembered as a hero. That's a painting glorifying Praljak. So these are the things that really can shock foreigners. Like, wasn't he that's war criminal? How is he glorified in these paintings, like publicly? It doesn't make sense. So part of my motivation was to explain these kind of things. So if someone reads the book and comes here and see, for instance, this painting, they will understand. That was my aim, to create a comprehensive view, and also not only when it comes to time, from the Middle Ages to July 2023, and also comprehensive when it comes to different aspects of life, culture, politics, and so on. Something that really tortured my mind and imagination was the fact of how history is so strong in everyday life. I've never seen it anywhere else in the world. How you don't know if the war, both wars, Second World War and the 1990s, happened 5 years ago, 15 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, because they are all around. In a nutshell, I'd say that people have to understand, even locals sometimes have to understand, that all sides feel totally victimized. They feel that they are the victims and others were the aggressors. And they are totally convinced about it, they have no doubt. And there is a logic behind it. It's not simply that they are manipulated or they are extremely nationalist. No, there is a logic, there is a strong logic. The problem is that the different sides never share their logics. And that is something very shocking. So in 2012, I wrote an article trying to describe the different versions of the same events. Because once again, it's something I would have loved to have found when I started to learn about the Balkans. When it was freshly published, I published it in Balkania, 2012. By the way, 2012, Balkania is not a very highly ranked academic journal. But year after year, even in this 2024, it is my most read and downloaded article. It's something very curious. In a few words, I gave the article when it was published to a friend of mine from Serbia. She read it, and then we met to have coffee. Asked, Tiana, how did you like it? She said, I started to read, and the first, let's say, version, but the Serbian version. But I was thinking, yeah, of course, this is it, yeah, this is how things happened. Then I read the Croat version, the Albanian version, the Bosnian version, and I was surprised how I never asked myself some questions. I was trapped in my own logic, and they also have their logics and reasons. So it made me think, she said. And I see how people are still curious. So, of course, I'll update it, a more developed version of what I wrote in that article. It's also in the book. It is everywhere. I don't need to tell you much because you are familiar with all this. I selected some pictures. How if you are in Croatia or in Herzegovina, you see this Ustasha graffiti, this glorification of Ante Pavelic, of this extreme right. I'm a Catholic. I'm used all my life to see Catholic churches, Catholic crosses, Catholic stuff around me. But when I'm in Croatia, I have a very weird feeling. I feel that it had a different meaning, as something that makes me feel very uneasy. It is not natural. It is so politicized, and you feel it. And okay, about this, we could organize a full course, because this subject, I think, is the most, well, we have this problem that can be solved very, very easily. No problem.
I'm sorry to take. Unfortunately, again, as you see, we have emergency with the weather, and we'll probably to remember something.
Opet radi, nema problema.
This is not because of mentioning Croatia. We will speak afterwards. Sorry, there is a movie that is made here, Balkanska pravila, in which exactly in this building, in which allegedly in what was 64, 7, a kind of Serbian and Croatian intelligence officers are killing themselves in the basement down there. We'll speak about that after.
So let's say one of my main aims, objectives, was to show readers, to introduce them to all these controversies. Why? Because if they visit Mostar, they see this Don't Forget sign, you see these museums of Srebrenica, also in Sarajevo, and they explain to visitors how much they suffer, how they were victims of Serbs and Croats, and they explain in full detail all that happened to them. But if you visit the Croats, they were also forced to live under German rule, then Serbian rule, then communist rule, and finally they got free after liberating part of their country that was unfairly taken by some Serbs in Krajina. If you come to Serbia, you see that victims are Serbs. 2 days ago in the Republike, you have this event protesting about this resolution, new resolution saying that Srebrenica was a genocide. You know all details, so no need to go further on that. But in Serbia, you see how people feel a victim of the international community, the Americans, the Croats, the Albanians. The Croats destroyed Yugoslavia, and they made ethnic cleansing of Serbs in Krajina. Kosovo was stolen from us. We were bombed, shelled in 1999 for no fair reason. How the West doesn't respect their own rules, like Kosovo had to be independent inside Serbia, but Krajina could not be independent in Croatia. Donbass cannot be independent in Ukraine. So in Serbia, people feel how the rules doesn't exist. The West changed them all the time, but always against Serbia. And of course, the Albanians in Kosovo, you go there, all they talk about was how much they suffer under the Serbs. They were victims for centuries. So finally, they have their own country. I thought it was necessary for foreigners, and also found out that some locals are also interested in this, to give some research on, to think, to reflect about all these controversies. Also, something extremely important to me is something that Misha mentions in his prologue to the book, and also mentioned today, how the West believed that they were like this fire squad that came to help, because in this country only barbarians, very violent and crazy people live. And you are different to the rest of the world. They see hooligans on TV and football, normal. This is the way these people from the Balkans are. They see Novak Djokovic breaking his racket, normal. This is a temperament that Serbs normally have. This is the way they are. Barbarians, yeah. He can play good tennis, but you see, he can write. All these even come, and these are the connections I want to make from this idea of Orientalism. I'm sure all of you are familiar with. So it explains many of these views. I chose this book cover, War and Peace in the Balkans. Oh, so here there is a book that talks about peace in the Balkans. Then what the book explains is how there were big wars in the Balkans, and the international community and international diplomacy brought peace. So this war is what locals did, and peace is what the international community, foreigners, brought. En Colombia, ¿dónde está Laura? Diríamos, esto le saca a uno la piedra. It's very, very tough to take, because there is even some racism behind it, I'd say, and so much arrogance behind it. I wanted to show how people are normal people. Those who come, even Misha said, people come here, like it here, even decide to live here, marry here. It is even dangerous. So it is not a land of barbarians. And you just need to come to see it. but this prejudice still exists. The examples are countless. Right before the war in Bosnia, there was a massive, huge demonstration against war in Sarajevo. People from all nationalities. It was something big. You can see pictures. So people, normal people, were committed to peace in times of extreme nationalist propaganda. So it is something very valuable. During the war, there are also so many stories of people from different nationalities helping each other, risking their lives to help who was supposed to be the enemy. So of course, there are stories of cruelty, and they were in the news permanently, but I was shocked about how all these stories were silenced, were not anywhere. There is a wonderful book, I really recommend you, by Svetlana Broz. Title is Good People in Evil Times. And I really recommend it, because you'll see the humanity, and I insist how people risk their lives only out of solidarity, helping each other. Some examples of peace initiatives are very controversial. Odpor, maybe some of you remember Odpor. Ana, ¿tú recuerdas Odpor? Do you know about Odpor? Or you don't know what it is? Okay. I asked precisely to see, but maybe younger generation that doesn't know much about Odpor. It was a non-violent movement against Milosevic, and it was very successful. And many people followed them, and it was like an example of how young civil society in Serbia was able to organize and to fight for democracy. It was not pink. You have Natasha Kandic, maybe younger generation are not familiar with her, but also very controversial. You have a woman in black, I'd say way more respected. Other movement like this baby revolution in 2013 in Bosnia and Herzegovina, people from all nationalities also poured into the street together to demand more peace and democracy and less nationalism. Many of these initiatives are silenced, are invisible in the West. But if you put all them together, you'll see that there is no barbaric society, there is no pink, perfect society, just people, normal people. I mean, I think it'd be stupid to idealize the Balkans and how wonderful you are, but also these prejudices, these stereotypes are totally out of place, and it must be said. Because sometimes people, something else I must say, come to the Balkans with some morbid expectations. Like, I'm going to Sarajevo to see this war tourism, to see this museum of genocide, to see holes in buildings, to listen to stories of suffering, of torture, of genocide, of concentration camps, and they come here to know about it because there are things that happen here that locals do. And that contributes to perpetuate the genocide. And sometimes it sells well. So particularly, I have to say that in Sarajevo, it is big business. So many tourists come because they want to see it, to know about it. Many people sell it to them. You want it, it's what you are going to have. But it gives the impression that the 1990s were, like, let's say, 3-4 years ago. It is always there. Another very interesting initiative, how the Albanians from Kosovo organized a non-violent, totally peaceful resistance movement, even created a parallel state in the early 1990s. It is a story that few people know about. It is really surprising to see how they managed to organize themselves so well to create this non-violent movement able to function as a parallel state. They refused to go to Serb doctors, to go to the Serb education system. It was a way to protest. Of course, it was not pink, and I am very critical in this book and some articles about the nature of that non-violent movement. But again, the idea is that local also can organize, and they organize themselves many times for peaceful means in a very peaceful way, like in other parts of the world. I to je to. Hvala. No, we can open the ground to comments and questions.
I have to say this is really last, scratching on the surface. The book is absolutely marvelous and full of so many things, including like historical developments and so on. Before I open the floor, I really have to emphasize two more things. One is why this is important, because extreme majority of the books that are dealing with the dissolution Yugoslavia starts with Milošević. Yeah, so everything was perfect, then came some guy, Slobodan Milošević, and after that everything just fell apart. This is the book, and you will see that first controversy started already when the country was established, and even before that, the different ideas and the concept of Yugoslavism, the one that was coming from the, let me say, Catholic Church, one that was coming from Austro-Hungary, one that was understood among language reformers and people who made Serbian and Croatian literary agreement and so on. So it goes, and especially the most important is emphasizing the constitutional changes in the 70s, because actually the fall of Yugoslavia started de facto with the constitutional changes from 71 and 74, and the book of Dejan Jović, whom you know, and his fantastic book, his PhD thesis about Yugoslavia, the state that was dying out in classical communist sense, was really because it really prepared itself for the dissolution. And I added just, that's maybe something that might be more emphasized in the future, the importance of the religious issues and questions, especially of Yugoslavia. First, that was the time with the conflict with the so-called Macedonian church actually started, which was politically pushed, autonomy of the church and dissolution of Serbian Orthodox Church. And on the other hand, there is a fantastic book of Darko Hudelist, which unfortunately still hasn't been translated to any foreign language. He was recently our guest here. The book is called Not Belgrade, but Rome. It's 500-600 pages. Actually, Darko Hudelist is very famous Croatian journalist, researcher, who is just finishing his 2-volume books about Serbian and Croatian relationship through history. He was our guest recently here. And what he investigated was the big intentional operation, which was called Velika Devetnica, or the Big 9 Years, in which a Croatian Catholic Church organized mobilization and protest of the Croatians after Maspok from 75 until 84. And Don Živko Kustić was leading the whole operation, and he said we started with what was like 20,000 people who were at the first rally. We finished in 84 with 300,000 people, and he said openly, we prepared Croatians for what HDZ did 6 years ago. So maybe this part should be also, but general intention to, show the many reasons for the dissolution of Yugoslavia before Milošević is really very great contribution. And the other very important issue I have to say is about the controversies. You mentioned Srebrenica, but also Vasi Miskina Street, Račak, Dobrovoljačka, and many of those things that are really usually used. No, no, of course, but especially during the last 10-year last war, actually, because they are usually, treated from one or other side only. I think that you gave very realistic apprehension of the whole problem, and especially that Vase Miskina and what was the other case, Rajko? My brain is not working. Markale. That was very interesting. I saw that in the book. They were not included into a process against Karadzic, which really at the end shows that they were more or less false flag, which was about that time. This is very controversial, but you pointed that very, very objectively. I think that's really one of the rare books in the foreign language that you will find very realistically done. Tuzlanska kapija as well and so on, but especially these two issues are very, very nicely done. Anyway, sorry for this additional comment. Now we can open the floor and ask Professor Ruiz Hименес about many things and give your comments and so on. Rajko, please join us.
Dear Professor, and I can say dear friend, thank you so much for being here today with us. I had the opportunity to read this book in PDF or Word format when you said to me and Misha that you were going to publish it. And my first impression after reading this book was that this is maybe the first objective book from the Western world about things that happened here in ex-Yugoslav space. And I think that it's very important because we here in Serbia, we don't want anything else. We just simply want to have someone in Spain or in Germany, in France, who will write something like this. And thank you so much, because I think that this book is going to be very useful for people in Spain. I would like to ask you one simple, maybe personal question. What inspired you to start reading, studying, and later writing about the Balkans?
A personal question. Let's say 3 reasons. My friend Tamara Tomasevich, who is here, asked me the same question yesterday, less than 24 hours ago. First, it was because when I stopped watching cartoons on TV and I started to watch news, my first news, the war in Yugoslavia came up. And it was all day, every day in the news because the media coverage was tremendous. So I was in my high school years, my first university years, exposed to news about the Balkans every day. Then the wars were finished, and I noticed how I could mention many facts, events. The Mostar Bridge was destroyed, something terrible happened in Srebrenica, but no context, no connection. I could not explain anything. On the contrary, it was like a maze, like a labyrinth. Okay, in the same war, you have former communists that now are turned into nationalists. But there are others, even national, named Chetniks, who are different, also fighting. And you have like Nazi section, Nazi side, Nazi of the war. But you also have Mujahideen fighting. Okay, and so on, like in the same war. And you also have the Americans there. The Americans are there too. Yeah, the Americans too. And you have volunteers from whatever country. So yeah, it was like unapprehensible. It looked like a labyrinth. And I had that frustration. I could not make any sense of it after watching so many news and after graduating in history, because they didn't mention a word about the Balkans during my studies. So I always felt that there was something missing. I had that in me. I felt I needed to know one day. And now that I'm getting old, I can say I answered many of the questions. But it was something that, it was in the back of my head for many years, even when I was not, even before I came to the Balkans and I was doing my things. I was not thinking, one day I will, no. I was like doing normal things for young people, but it was somewhere on the back of my head all the time. And when the chance came, when I finished my PhD on different subjects, when I finished my first book, I told myself, hey, I had this, I always ask myself about, so maybe now it is the moment to do it. Second question, second reason that made me be interested, read, write, was sports. And we know a lot about it because Reiko and I go way back and we spoke about many things, sports one of them. We have not played basketball yet together, but we will one day. I know you are a tremendous three-pointer shooter. I have to see for myself. Because when I was younger and all my friends were following sports, it was like religion for us. When you are 19, 20, 21, you live for sports. Well, we lived, my group of friends, for sports. So we could not wait to watch the games. And at that time, the best teams in Europe, particularly in basketball, were Spanish and from the Balkans in general, from former Yugoslavia. And what did we see? Of course, we support the Spanish teams, like very famous, Real Madrid, Barcelona, also other teams that were super at that time, Juventud Badalona, CAI Zaragoza, etc. 1990s was a decade of economic growth in Spain, so they built new arenas everywhere, new pavilions for sports. Teams have super sponsors, like, I don't know, Ford, Toyota, that paid very good money so they could buy the most expensive players. Or players, those who made it to the first team, were normally 28, 30, 31, like built, rich, famous, with famous brands, with famous sponsors, with wonderful arena, full of people going to watch them. And then you saw these Balkan guys, all young, skinny, with arenas like from the 1950s, 60s, very old, the sponsors like Sintelon or Jugoplastica, very modest, but they always won by 20 points. Always. Not once, not twice. So we believe, okay, today we have to win, because one day, at least one day, have to win. No, we never made it. It was for Zivona from Zagreb. Then when we bought Dražen Petrović because we had money. So, okay, now that this player is the best, we lose because they have this player. So let's bring him to Spain and then we will win, because we have what we had, plus the Balkan stars, we can't miss. No. We had Petrović, but then these guys from Jugoplastica were even better, and we lost the trophy again. And then when Jugoplastica, after 3 years, could not win anymore, Partizan from Belgrade started to win, like Brate. So, yeah, we have this frustration.
You have to dissolve Yugoslavia. Of course.
Yeah, he had to come to Spain to win the first EuroLeague for us. Without him, yeah, nema titula.
And Persic.
And later Persic for Barcelona. Barcelona.
Please, if you want to speak. Thank you very much.
You know, sport fans are like this. We can't keep it inside. I understand you. We can't keep it inside. Yeah, even Barcelona needed Persic after 100 years history. After having super teams, they needed, Jelko to win EuroLeague for us. We were fascinated. Like, there must be something we don't know, some magic. What do they eat? How they practice? Because there must be some reason, can be by magic. So we were always fascinated, asking ourselves what the secret was. Because they didn't only win. I forgot something super important, very, very important. Maybe the most important of all. When you lose once and again against someone, you tend to develop, because you are a fan, some kind of, let's say, hate to the other team. You don't like these guys. They are preventing you to have what you want. But everybody loved Balkan teams, Balkan players. We didn't like the Italians. We didn't like Milano. We didn't like Torino. We didn't like Manchester. But when Jugoplastica came to Spain, everybody wanted to see them, clapped on them, supported them. They loved them. Petrovic was a very particular case. But he was more famous than any Spanish player. My dad, he doesn't like sports, zero. But when Petrovic was playing, he was doing his things. I remember once that he stopped and said, "Who is Petrovic? They only speak about Petrovic. Petrovic is playing alone or what?" So he was really something. All these guys, Bodiroga came to Spain, Sale Georgievich came to Spain. But even before they came, people loved them. And when they signed for Spanish teams, people were so happy. Danilovic didn't play in Spain, but we also like him. He played in Italy for Virtus. Virtus. And the third reason, I told you 3 reasons to be so much into the Balkans. It's something I can't explain. There is 0 objective reason, because the first 2 are objective. This thirst to understand what happened and this fascination about sports. But there is something that I can explain. Like when you like a person and you don't know why. You love that person, you're in love with that person. And you know that person is the one you want to be with. But I was giving yesterday the example to Tamara in our coffee time. How you can like her eyes, her hair, but you might be told, "Hey, look, that other woman has better eyes, better hair." Okay, but this is the woman that I like. Don't ask me why, but I know she's the one. So I have that feeling here in the Balkans. When I came, I was fascinated by everything, the name of cities, language, architecture, the land, everything. So this third factor also had a very important weight in what I did.
Please wait for me to bring you the microphone.
Well,
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you for your kind of lecture, but I would like to ask you about, Spain is traditional, very Catholic state, and Croatia and Slovenia are also very traditional Catholic state. On the other one hand, you know that Spanish media have some kind of image of how Yugoslav war actually occurred, what is the consequences, results, and also influences of that. How you managed to, what was the image of breakup of Yugoslavia in Spain in 1990s and even in 2000, in early 2000s, and how you managed to deal with some kind of imagology that already existed, and how you managed to resolve that and to write that book. Thank you so much.
People in Spain knew very little about Yugoslavia. When the war broke up, we in Spain believed that they were Yugoslav. We were surprised there were so many nationalities. We didn't even know about Macedonians. Some intellectuals knew, but average people had no idea. People even believed there was a language named Yugoslav. People believed that you spoke Yugoslav. Then we were told that no, it is Serb-Croatian. But on the other hand, Serb-Croatian doesn't exist. It's not a language. So everything in the Balkans is complicated. But we knew very little. First news we had was about Croatia, refugees. So first image was communist country wanting to keep this more European democratic part of Yugoslavia that wants to flee, that wants to leave. But a much bigger impact in the news came by the siege of Sarajevo, and also news about Mostar and later Srebrenica. So the image was these Bosniaks surrounded by some troglodyte, aggressive ultranationalist Serbs. And people really felt, because of this extreme news coverage, very close and felt a strong solidarity with the Bosniaks, because the siege of Sarajevo was very tight. And our journalists were there, Spanish journalists were there every day, reporting how things were tough in Sarajevo. So it shaped the image of the war very, very much. And then in 1999, the news again insisted. They didn't emphasize never religion, like Albanians are Muslims, Croats are Catholics. Even after the news, most Spanish didn't notice it, didn't have conscience that Albanians that from Kosovo were Muslims and Serbs were Orthodox Catholics. No. But again, you have some victim community attacked by Serbs. Again, Milosevic was the Hitler of the Balkans, the butcher of the Balkans, like Misha just said. All was good. This guy was the problem from the beginning to the end. So people were not surprised, not in Spain, all over the world. Yeah, we knew how bad Milosevic, even though he tried to paint himself in pink in Dayton to save himself and to make things easier for Serbia. Kosovo was his end. So that's what I can tell you about how people in Spain were receiving and feeling the news, like in their different stages. Basically, Croatia, the most important, more intense ones in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Kosovo was shorter, but also very intense. I remember how regular banks opened accounts for people, regular people who wanted to donate money for Kosovo, because we felt that we had to help. Then it disappeared from the news. So from being every day all over the world, we guess we had to assume that things were good in Kosovo because they don't talk about it anymore. But no, here and there they mention Kosovo and things are very bad. But nobody stopped to think, what happened to all that money the international community invested in Kosovo and the money that NGOs and regular people donated? It is a small place, less than 2 million people. It should be like Monte Carlo or Monaco now with all that money, but it's not. But those questions are never asked by the media, so people don't ask those questions to themselves. And that's also kind of things. These kind of things are the ones I also wanted to reflect in the book, because I believe they are things worth mentioning and worth analyzing. They're not small.
You inspired me actually about this one methodological question. Actually, you know that Spaniards are really present in, especially in Yugoslavia in short way, Serbia and Montenegro, especially Felipe Gonzalez in election crisis in 96, 97, and also Count Westendorp. So I would like to ask you, have you entered their perspectives on Serbia and Montenegro in breakup of Yugoslavia or not? You just managed to do this with only Yugoslavian stuff, not to enter the Spaniards in the Spanish perspective in that. Have you entered it? Because and Solana also as a general secretary, yes.
Good question. Good question. Maybe it was my mistake. Maybe it was wrong. But when I started to read and to listen what they said and wrote. I felt they were extremely superficial. They wanted the picture, they wanted to look good, but they were never deep. And Solana, very particular person. 2 years ago, I don't know why, it was something very strange, but they invited me to attend to some events of NATO in Madrid, and the King of Spain was there. I have never been with the King of Spain in my life. The president of the country, all previous secretary generals of NATO were there. People that you see on TV were there, and me. Maybe something was wrong with my invitation. They wanted to send it to somewhere else, but I was there. And it was 2 years ago. War in Ukraine was much fresher than now. It was big deal, very hot issue. And everybody spoke how it was important to develop our military spending to protect ourselves from Russia. It was impossible to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. It is impossible to deal with the Russians. So it is war or nothing, or we will seriously endanger, they said literally, the way we live, or democracy, or way to live. Everybody agreed on that except Solana. He was the only person, and he was brave, because he was totally against the time, to say, I think this is not the way, I think we must talk, I think we are coming into very dangerous waters, and it is not true that diplomacy is finished and closed and we can't do anything else. We should insist on diplomacy and to seriously look for peace. So why that guy was the one who shelled this city and many others? I was invited by Lukyanov. After he came here, we spoke, and he invited me to his TV show, TV program, and he asked me the same question. Why Solana did it? Because it doesn't go well with the guy. Obviously, no matter what your personal convictions are, when you're in that position, you don't decide much. So I guess he gave a good image for NATO, socialist, cultivated person, even pacifist. But in the end, when it comes to business, he was told what to do and he had to do it. Even if he had refused, he would have been replaced. So it would have not made any difference. So he was the only person, character with some substance when it comes to the Balkans. But in the end, he didn't do much, and he was never particularly, I feel, chasing torture for what happened here. Like, okay, it was something wrong, but I guess they are now all right. Because he was never like mentioning, writing about how wrong things were. And they were very, very wrong in 1999, extremely wrong.
Felicitaciones por la presentación. Thank you very much for the presentation. Well, connected with the colleagues' questions, I just want to make like two ones. The first one is like, there should be like a coherence between the official Spanish position towards like the Yugoslavian breakup and now the situation between Serbia and Kosovo with the public opinion, because at the same time, yes, it's this connection from since Franco times, this anti-communism and these there were like really hard games against Yugoslavian football. I can recall that there were like Yugoslavia eliminating Spain in '74, but then Spain eliminating in '82, and then Yugoslavia eliminating in '90. Oh, the Juanito bottle. Yeah, and even the one that was like Serbia Montenegro in 2000, the last Yugoslavian team. Is this coherence between like the public opinion and the official position? Because at the same time, it's this connection with the yeah, support the Catholic ones, but at the same time, the integrity of the countries, because they have the case of Catalonia and Euskadi, that if they support Kosovo or autonomic claims, they will, the inside the space will make the ones. The first question. And the second one, I don't know if this book is also dealing about like the new countries and like the towards against Kosovo, or in the sports one, because I recall a case that was like just again in the Spanish media when Spain played against Kosovo for, I guess, qualification for 22 Cup. And they were very careful in the media not mentioning like as a country, because that will be like a formal recognition. And yeah, they were like very careful. The Televisión Española, they put like a Federation of Football of Kosovo or Kosovo Football Team. Even they put Kosovo with not capital letters. So my second question is like if this topic is mentioned in one of the books, or it was like again this debate in the Spanish media, or it was only like football or my perception or his perception. For the rest, congratulations again and thank you.
Muchas gracias, Manuel. Oops, I was about to speak in Spanish. It's like, I don't know why. I always we speak to each other in Spanish. Okay, first, in Spain, people never felt closer to Croatia because they were Catholics. It was never an issue. Even the independence of Kosovo in itself is not an issue in Spain. What are the concerns about Yugoslavia and Kosovo in Spain? For average people, once again, you have some intellectual minority, but most people, the way they see it, Yugoslavia was a plural and federal country, similar to Spain. Spain is not federal, but this autonomous communities structure is very, very close. They had some secessionist, nationalist partisan movements, like us. They ended up in a war and violence because of nationalism. They are very curious because they want to see the similarities and to see if something similar could happen to us. That's, I think, the main reason why Spanish people buy this kind of books, because they are curious about that parallelism, regular people. And about Kosovo, they normally would prefer Spain not to recognize Kosovo, but it is something very abstract because they don't know much about Kosovo. They know that if part of Spain became independent, they would not like to recognize it. They would like the rest of the world not to recognize it. So for them, not recognizing Kosovo is a preemptive way to say, hey, these kind of countries that became independent this way should not be recognized. Because if this happened to us, we would expect, we would like international community not to recognize them. That is the real issue there. And that's why you saw all this thing in television and all. But about Kosovo, about details about what happened in Kosovo now in history, people don't know, people are not interested. But they are very interested in the general idea of if something like that could happen to us. Even journalists, when they interview me about some new book on the Balkans, they always ask that question. And you think something similar could happen in Spain? Because that's also what readers want to know about.
Thank you.
I will translate for the gentleman.
Lično sam jako zahvalan profesoru na knjizi koja duboko zalazi u teme koje ovdje su zabranjene izvan javnog.
I'm very grateful to the professor for exposing themes in his book that are widely banned in contemporary in our contemporary society, except in official propaganda.
Drugo, nadam se kakav je Balkan da će knjiga i dalje biti živa i doživjeti još više izdanja.
I hope that with the Balkans being what it is, that the book will continue living on and live and see many further editions.
Preporučujem profesoru
I suggest to the professor
da poseti izvan hrama Svetog Save pano o njegovoj izgradnji, gdje možda se zaključi da Drugi svjetski rat traje 40 godina.
to see a series of posters outside the temple of Saint Sava, where one can clearly see that the Second World War has been going on for 47 years.
Sljedeći. Da li se profesor slaže s tim da Jugoslavija ne bi bila rasturena?
Does the professor agree that Yugoslavia would not? This is a question. Does the professor agree that Yugoslavia would not have dissolved?
Da nijedan narod ili republika nisu htjeli da idu na zapad.
If none of the republics or none of the peoples had wanted to go towards the west.
I posljednje,
And finally,
mnogi optužuju Miloševića, međutim on je postigao veliki uspeh.
many accuse Milosevic, but he has achieved a great success.
Da suprotno svim drugim narodima Jugoslavije
That, in contrary to all other peoples in Yugoslavia,
sačuva ono što je vredelo pre njega
preserve what was valuable before his time
i što se nastavilo i posle.
and what has continued after his time.
There is much more.
Okay.
We simply didn't. Mr. Aleksandar Vukajlović is the cyber expert, cybersecurity expert, and he's not member of our institute, but somehow we adopted him because he's following all our events here, and always we have his valuable philosophical contribution, as you could see here. You know, thank you very much for just to present you. Please.
Thank you very much for the question, for your interest. I'll go to Uzbekistan. I'm always curious about these street exhibitions because they normally mean a lot. About the West playing the role of attracting republics in a way to dissolve Yugoslavia intentionally. It was part of it. The roots were much deeper, because everything is complicated in the Balkans, so single explanations are never enough. But yeah, it was part of the equation, and even particularly Slovenia and Croatia developed some feeling of not being Slavic, but being Central European countries and nations, like trapped in Yugoslavia. They in Slovenia even consider the idea of changing the name of the country because Slovenia sounded too Slavic. Sometimes I believe it is like these matriuskas. You have the Germans, then you have the Austrians that believe that they're like the Germans, but they are not. The Germans look at the Austrian like disorganized, like it's not so trustable. And the Slovenians believe they are almost Austrians, but they are not. So yeah, they feel they want to be in the West, but they are what they are. They are in the middle.
Okay. Let me not forget that we are actually part of the School of Latin American Studies, you know. And I cannot but ask you, since you already had this experience with Colombia and generally with Latin America, and of course it's a big issue for Spain and so on. So could you tell us something about our, we often see ourselves as a little bit, as I said yesterday, Latin American people in mentality, not only because of football, not only because of cocaine and other stuff, you know, but in mentality as somebody who is, you know, like, in a way, colony of big powers of Europe and so on, and who has this kind of relationship, that kind of fighting. On one hand, we are, you know, culturally, as you said, in many parts of our identities are based on let me say, the European Bildung and so on. But on the other hand, we have some other traditions. Here for us is, of course, Islam and this Mediterranean flavor, which also is the mixture that you have in Latin America. So could you comment about that?
I'm going to think out loud a bit, even though we've spoken of this before. I'd say that we seem to share some Mediterranean features, because you said we were colonized and all, but Spain still has some mentality of being an empire, being the one who colonized, but we are still close. And we are Europe. It is something very informal, but it is a fact. We speak about the Europeans and we know what we mean when we say the Europeans. We are Europeans, but when we think about the Germans, the French, the Danish, they are different. But we are not. We understand each other. Like, yeah, the Europeans are like this, but we understand each other. They are definitely not Mediterranean. We even joke about it every 5 minutes. Like before we started presentation, we say, hey, we are not like them. So if we start late, we know that we do things like that. It is totally okay. Nobody is going to get mad or anything, or think that we are not professional. No. We have this complicity and we feel it. It is impossible to measure, I insist, but it is there. And I don't know what the deep roots of that fact are, but we find in each other very fast that we share this complicity of not being square, of doing things our way. For instance, innate is impossible to translate. Doesn't exist in any other language. But we have Don Quixote, who is pure innate. And we understand innate in Spain. So we also are a country of innate in a way. So that's the kind of codes that we share. And they are very difficult to organize, to define, but they exist. So yeah, we, let's say, play in the same league. Why? We don't know why. Weather is different, language is different, religion is sometimes different. But when it comes to this complicity, it comes very fast. Yeah, maybe we should write something about it one day and not show the Europeans. Something else, I almost forget, very important. Particularly in the Balkans, we don't have it in Spain, and this particular fact has to do with the fact that you have been colonized so many times. The international powers see the Balkans always at their backyard. And they know that they are always going to have the last word in internal conflicts. But for local nations and peoples, they also know that the big powers are going to come, and they know that they are going to have the last word. They expect them to come and decide. So, local nations have developed an art of dealing with them, because they know they are coming, they know they are rich, they know they are arrogant, they know they are powerful, but they know what buttons they have to press to make the big powers to do what they want here. And that's an art, and you do well. So they will... Powers believe that they are in charge, but you know how to deal with them and how to make them do what you really want. And make them believe that they were in charge all the time. Unfortunately, I think the Serbs, we have not been the best playing that game, but the Muslims, I think, has been the best. They managed very well to be sympathetic to them and to make them play what they want. And in principle, in 1991, they were not close to the US. They didn't have disadvantaged position, but they learned that lesson well. But in few words, there is one Spanish scholar, Francisco Veiga. He wrote a fantastic book, La Trampa Balcánica, The Balkan Trap. And he gave that title to the book because he noticed how these big powers come to the Balkans and they fall on the trap because the locals know how to deal with them. So it is the powerful ones who are trapped here, not the other way around, no matter how rich they are, how much money they have, and all.
Thank you. My name is Gianluca Gardini. Congratulations, I really enjoyed the presentation and I appreciated very much the intellectual honesty that seems to me really characterizes your approach to the topic. I wanted to ask two quick questions. The first, can you expand a little bit on the role of the external powers here in the Balkan area? And in particular, I would like to ask you if there is any European country that has a very specific or peculiar position. So, I don't know, more closer to any country in the Balkan or with something that it goes somehow against the tide and something like that. And the second question, in Italy, perhaps the most renowned expert, the intellectual and journal Paolo Rumiz, who wrote about the former Yugoslavia. He suggested that during the former Yugoslav times, there was an underpinning tension between the cosmopolitan big cities in the former Yugoslavia and the coastal area, more open to the world, for instance, to innovation, and the interior of the country. That would be closer, a little bit backward if you want. And Paolo Rumiz suggested or argued that that was one of the possible explanations of the conflict than in the former Yugoslavia. What's your take on that and what do you think? And by the way, when you said that Serbia and other countries are playing the big powers against each other, I just received a fantastic article from The Economist of a couple of weeks ago, I think, that is called The European Country Playing Off the US, Russia, China and Europe, and that's about how Serbia plays that game. So, just out of curiosity, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Gardini. We also appreciate your honesty and the way you explain things. I really enjoyed your presentation yesterday. I couldn't stay to the end, but I'm very glad that you could make it today here. Even before you made your questions, you spoke about honesty. And I've learned that you can't be objective, no matter how much you try. You can be as objective as it gets, but you can say, hey, this is the final word. For instance, when I had to face all different versions of the Second World War 1990s, one possible approach is, okay, let's listen to everybody, let's read everything, and let's see who is right. But I notice I'm not a judge. Who am I to judge? And to, a judge, consider all facts, events, information, and then tell people who were the good guys and who were the bad guys. No. So I try to honestly share the views that locals have, and then I expect my readers to be old enough and smart enough to take their own decisions. And that honesty is something I've thought about so much as a historian, as a researcher in peace and conflict studies. Here is Moikung, Marco Bellotti. Thank you very much for being here today. He lives in Granada for many years, but he's a good Serb. He never forgot what being a good Serb means. And we speak a lot about history because he's a surgeon, but he loves history. After Ratko Mladic was sentenced, we spoke a lot again about the history of the Balkans and all. And we agreed on how one of the deepest problems here is the lack of empathy between the different sides. How you know how much you suffer, how the others, you know that they also suffered, but there is always an explanation. Or you don't talk much about it, or for instance, you go to the National Museum of Banja Luka, and they have history books there, of course, and it is directly written. I have it in my house. They don't write much, but it is something like this. Short statement, because they go through ancient history in full detail, but from 1990s. And then there was a big war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Our army, Republika Srpska army, fought bravely for freedom in an exemplary way, and they didn't commit any of the crimes, they didn't do anything of those events they are often accused of. No need to mention Srebrenica, Sarajevo, Mostar, not a word. But they had a huge exhibition about Srebrenica. So we agreed how the lack of empathy is a big problem. You focus so much on your victimization, but you don't emphasize a bit on the suffering of others. Your first question was about big countries' influence here. Depending on the moment, it is super interesting. Of course, Russia played a big role. After the Ottomans, the Austrians wanted to. They had their 8 very intense years. Ivo Andrić described them very well. Even architecture describes those short 8 years. It is amazing how much they did in a short period of time. You have the French, you have the British, you have the Americans, now you have China. So Turkey, of course. You go to Mostar. Iran has consulate in Mostar. Yeah. And you see people from Qatar, from Dubai, of course, from the European Union, from the US. So this is, like I said, mock-up, like maqueta of the whole world is here. And it still applies totally. And about interior and Italy, of course, also played a big role when, what was the name of this guy? The president of Montenegro. He was always with Milosevic. Momir Bulatovic. So Italy approached Bulatovic. Proposed him to finance. He didn't say your pockets directly, but he knew he could take some, but to give plenty of credits to Montenegro if Montenegro left Yugoslavia. But it was some private deal between Italy and Momir Bulatovic. And he accepted. Even though he was said to be the Konobar of Milosevic, he saw that he could do something by himself and do good for the country and say, hey, you know what, we became independent, we got rid of this problem-street country, we have good friends, we have money, now what? And you remain here, of course with full pockets. But Milosevic, like kid, took his ear, brought him to Belgrade. He said, the Italian, sorry, I can't do it, in few words. But even Italy, apart from having this history in Croatia and all, so yeah, every country tried to have influence here. Again, this might be super subjective. You said people on the coast maybe are more Mediterranean. Well, Serbs are Mediterranean enough, I'd say. But we tend to compare Yugoslavia with Spain. It is funny and, of course, cannot be accurate. But the Serbs are pretty much the Castilians of Yugoslavia. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Russians and Castilians.
So the Slovenes are closer to the Basques. The Croats are closer to the Catalans, of course. Yeah, and the Muslims are like the Andalusians. The Macedonians might be the
Macedonians, Galicians.
Galicians, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we see those differences and we even apply them to Spain, and it pretty much works. See how quickly they said, yeah, of course, they are like this. So yeah, we have this. Sorry?
Basques are more like Albanians. A little different.
That's not. But I'm sure the Albanians will feel very, very well. Yeah, with hearing to that comparison. Yeah.
As I said, we have to, just shorten it a little bit, and I think that we are approaching to the end slowly, because we will have to run actually to the restaurant in order to Rajko to be able to come to his lecture. But for the end, I have to ask you about the future, definitely. When you know all this that was going on, and the whole complex history of identities, cultures, and everything, what do you see actually about the future of this space? And if I have to ask about Yugoslavian idea, not only in the sense of, the one state, but about the culture. Could we say that South Slavic culture as, space survived after all that, Last, by the way, to use that for those people who don't know, there is a beautiful movie made on the novel by Jasminka Petrović, which is called Leto kada sam naučila da leti, the summer I learned to fly. You should watch that. And last night they showed that in Croatian national TV, which is very warm about the Serbian-Croatian relationship, personal dramas about the brother and sister who were not speaking for 25 years and so on. And there is still ongoing, there was a big debate if they're gonna title it, like they do with Ozljede, drame, rane and so on. So they made, that was very interesting. Finally, they gave up because the director didn't allow that, but there are some phrases in English, and then they full-scale translated to Bok, to everything and so on. But anyway, you see that there is a big interest for the common culture, for everything, and I joke always with my Croatian friends that 2 years ago, the most popular singer at YouTube in Croatia was Anastasia Ražnatović, the daughter of Željko Ražnatović Arkan, the war criminal and Serbian war criminal. No, but she was okay. But 2 years ago, officially, she was dead. So actually, to summarize, what do you see for the whole region, and could we speak that culture is surviving somehow? And thank you very much. I'm finishing with this.
First, a little anecdote. Now that Misha mentioned Arkham, kind of things that I included in the book, because you have to be a local to understand certain things. Most people don't know who Arkham was, but those who know very well that he was very special. But basically, out of this country were criminal, mafia guy. So foreigners...
Even in country, don't forget.
Yeah, but in this country, this is what foreigners can understand. You have to sit with them, order coffee, and take it easy. The day after his wedding with Zeta, there was still something called VCR, these videotapes. And they had these video clubs where you could go and rent some movie. So the year after, the most rented movie was Arkham's wedding. So first, they made a video edition of it and distributed it. Mafia and war criminal, like, no, impossible, no, yeah. But not only that, people massively rented it to watch it at home. So locals, okay, don't talk, hey, we are different, because no, they just did it. But for foreigners, they can't understand. They need time. And about the region, yes, of course. Before Yugoslavia came to exist, there was that feeling of sharing a lot. And even though terrible things happen and all this propaganda and resentments, it's still there in many ways. For instance, here, you might like the Croats more or less, or being different to them. But you go to Canada, and the guy across the street from Croatia, normally, hey, and you feel super comfortable. You make jokes, and you share codes that you know you share well. You can be kumovi, no problem. Here in the Balkans, it is not so easy, but then you need sometimes to be outside. Another little anecdote. Many years ago, when Mostar was in shambles, we invited the rectors of the two universities, because Mostar was divided. It was very, very tense. So we brought them to Granada to sign an agreement of cooperation. It seemed to be impossible at the time. Now it is not moment for details, but the fact is that they didn't speak to each other, never. They never even saw each other in Mostar, because it was very, very tense, and they don't like, it was very fresh. They didn't like the other. So when they came to Granada, they didn't even look at each other. They were always serious, only spoke to us. That was the idea, bringing them to Granada, taking them to nice places, to good restaurants, to watch Alhambra. So they, malo po malo, were relaxing. And then we noticed one of them made a comment, and the other one laughed. And then they started to make jokes, because they went from even from the same city, not a big city. So of course that the region always will have very, very strong links.
But not in Kafana, not so much.
And also, my wife helped me a lot to see this, because she works in a company with some branches all over former Yugoslavia, and they do business. They are based in Belgrade. They do business with Muslims in Bosnia and Herzegovina, with Croats, with Macedonians, with Montenegrians. No problem. But it is not something particular of her firma. All firmas do it because it is normal. So business is another way that keep all nations close on a daily basis. So yeah, those links were there before Yugoslavia, were there in Yugoslavia, and are still there. And I think they can be any other way. It is so logical, so strong.
Okay. Muchas gracias. Estamos terminando. I would like to remind you that there is a possibility that you could buy the book. So the ones who wants to do that, please come. We don't have a lot of time to do that. Thank you very much after everything. And thanks, I want to thank the guys, and mostly girls actually, but from Association of Hispanists Serbia. I think that we are continuing to work quite in important stuff. And at the end, of course, I will give the floor to Jose Angel. I hope that we'll continue working in many different levels, and that this is the first of many your future visits and participation to some other project. Thanks a lot, and please finish so we could go on.
That's a book. We have plenty of mutual events in the future. I just wanted to thank you again for coming here, but especially for your attention. I felt between friends all the time, so I came to give presentation on my book, but your eyes, your faces, I don't know, your questions, I felt between friends all the time, and I wanted to share that feeling to you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.